Little girl calls 911 and says, "Does every dad do this?" Truth leaves everyone in tears. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. In the quiet suburbs of Detroit, where autumn leaves scattered across modest lawns, stood a small, blue house that seemed to hold its breath. Inside, 6-year-old Sadie Parker sat by the window, her small fingers pressed against the glass as she counted passing cars. 23 today. Yesterday it had been 31. She'd been counting every day since her daddy left to get milk. Red car, blue truck, silver van, she whispered to Mr. Hoppy, the well-loved stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Daddy said the silver ones are the fastest. Maybe he'll come home in a silver one today. Sadie slid down from her perch at the window, wincing slightly as she landed. Her tummy had been feeling strange lately, tight and uncomfortable. She tugged at her rainbow belt, frowning when she realized she needed to fasten it tighter than before, even though she hadn't been eating much. The kitchen told its own silent story. Cabinet doors hung open, revealing empty shelves. In the refrigerator, a half-empty bottle of ketchup, a jar of pickles, and something in a container that had turned an interesting shade of green. Sadie had tried eating some yesterday. It hadn't tasted good, and now her stomach felt even worse. "He said he'd be right back, Mr. Hoppy," Sadie explained, setting her rabbit on the kitchen counter as she stood on tiptoes to reach the last box of crackers. Empty. She'd finished those 3 days ago. He promised. 12 days had passed since Kyle Parker had grabbed his keys, ruffled Sadie's hair, and said, "Be right back, sunshine, just running to get some milk." Sadie had nodded, barely looking up from her coloring book. It was normal. Daddy always came back, but this time was different. Night fell early, shadows stretching across the untidy living room. Sadie curled up on the couch, clutching her stomach as it made angry, growling noises. The hunger had become her constant companion, along with the strange burning sensation and the way her middle seemed to swell more each day. "Something's moving inside," she whispered to Mr. Hoppy in the darkness. "Is that what hungry feels like?" The house creaked and settled around her, a sound that used to be comforting when Daddy was there to explain that houses talk at night. Now every noise made her pull Mr. Hoppy closer. In the dim glow of the nightlight, Sadie spotted her father's phone charger still plugged into the wall. He never went anywhere without his phone charger. His work boot stood by the door. His toothbrush remained in the bathroom cup. It was as if he had just stepped out and would return any moment. But 12 days was a very long time. When her stomach cramped sharply, Sadie curled tighter into a ball, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She remembered what her daddy had taught her about emergencies. "If something's really wrong, sunshine, you call 911, but only for real emergencies." Was this an emergency? She wasn't sure, but as another pain shot through her middle and the hunger made her feel dizzy, Sadie made her decision. With trembling fingers, she reached for the landline phone and dialed the 3 numbers her father had made her memorize. 911, what's your emergency? A woman's voice answered. Sadie's small voice quavered as she asked the question that had been haunting her for 12 long days. Does every dad do this? Leave you and never come back? On the other end of the line, Officer Ray Monroe felt his heart stop for just a moment. Officer Ray Monroe had answered thousands of emergency calls during his 15 years on the force, but something about this small, uncertain voice made him grip his pen tighter. "No, sweetheart, not every dad does that," Ray said gently, signaling to his dispatcher to trace the call. "Can you tell me your name?" "Sadie," came the whispered reply. "Sadie Parker. I'm Officer Ray. How old are you, Sadie?" 6 3/4. There was pride in her voice despite its weakness. Ray kept his tone calm, though his concern mounted. "And you're home alone right now?" "With Mr. Hoppy," Sadie clarified, as if this important detail made everything okay. "He's my rabbit. Not a real one, a stuffed one." The dispatcher silently mouthed an address to Ray. He nodded, already reaching for his keys. "Sadie, When did you last see your dad? There was a pause, then the sound of counting under her breath. 12 days ago. He went to get milk. Another pause. My tummy really hurts, Officer Ray. Ray was already heading to his patrol car, phone still pressed to his ear. I'm coming to help you, Sadie. Can you stay on the phone with me? I think so, she replied, her voice fainter now. I'm really tired. Tell me about Mr. Hoppy, Ray suggested, turning on his siren as he pulled away from the station. What color is he? As Sadie described her beloved gray rabbit with the missing eye and patched ear, Ray drove through the quiet Detroit suburbs, his mind racing. Children this young didn't typically call 911 themselves. Whatever was happening in that house, this little girl had been alone for far too long. Are you coming in a police car? Sadie asked suddenly. With the lights? I sure am. Ray confirmed, hearing a small sound that might have been excitement. Daddy says police officers are helpers, Sadie informed him, her voice momentarily stronger. Are you coming to help find my daddy? Ray's grip tightened on the steering wheel. I'm coming to help you both, Sadie. As he turned onto Maple Street, Ray spotted the small blue house from the dispatcher's description. The yard was overgrown, newspapers piled on the porch, no lights visible inside. Sadie, I'm outside your house now. Can you see the police lights? A small pause then. They're pretty, blue and red. I'm going. To knock on your door. Can you come let me in? I'm not supposed to open the door for strangers, Sadie said hesitantly. That's a very good rule, Ray affirmed. But police officers are safe to let in, especially when you called us. Remember, you can see my police car outside. Okay, she agreed, though uncertainty lingered in her voice. Ray approached the front door, noting the untouched mail, the abandoned appearance of the property. Something about this situation didn't fit the typical pattern of parental abandonment. He knocked firmly. Police officer, he called out. From inside, he heard small, shuffling footsteps, then silence. Sadie, it's Officer Ray from the phone. After a moment, the door opened just a crack, revealing a small face framed by tangled brown hair. Wide blue eyes peered up at him with a mixture of hope and fear. What struck Ray most was how she protectively wrapped one arm around her middle, which seemed distended beneath her wrinkled t-shirt. You came, she whispered, as if she hadn't quite believed he would. Ray knelt down to her level, keeping his voice gentle. I promised I would. As Sadie slowly opened the door wider, Ray caught his first glimpse of the silent house that had been her prison and sanctuary for 12 long days. Ray stepped carefully into the dimly lit house, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. The air inside felt stale, with a subtle undercurrent of spoiled food. But what caught his attention wasn't what he could smell. It was what he could see. The home wasn't abandoned, not in the way he'd expected. A coffee mug sat on the counter with dried remnants at the bottom. A jacket hung over a kitchen chair. Mail was stacked neatly on a side table, opened and sorted. These weren't the signs of someone who had planned to disappear. Sadie, when was the last time you ate something? Ray asked gently, noticing how the little girl swayed slightly where she stood. Yesterday, I tried to eat the green stuff in the container. She made a face. It tasted bad and made my tummy hurt worse. Ray's training kicked. In first priority, the child's immediate needs. I have some crackers and water in my car. Would that be okay? Sadie nodded eagerly, then winced, pressing her hand against her visibly swollen stomach. Does your tummy hurt right now? Ray asked, already pulling out his phone to call for medical assistance. It feels funny, like something's moving around inside. Her small face scrunched in confusion. And it got bigger. See? She lifted her shirt just enough to reveal her distended abdomen, which seemed alarmingly pronounced on her otherwise thin frame. Ray kept his expression neutral, despite his growing concern. I'm gonna get you those crackers, and then we're going to have a doctor check out that tummy, okay? While retrieving the snacks from his patrol car, Ray requested an ambulance and backup, keeping his voice low. When he returned, he found Sadie in the living room, clutching a worn gray stuffed rabbit. This is Mr. Hoppy, she introduced solemnly. He's been keeping me company while Daddy's gone. Ray sat beside her, offering the crackers and water. He looks like a good friend. As Sadie nibbled slowly, Ray took the opportunity to look around more thoroughly. Photos lined the walls. Sadie with a young man who must be her father, both smiling widely at a park, at a beach, in front of a Christmas tree. This was a home with love in it. Sadie, can you tell me about your dad? What's his name? Kyle Parker, she replied, taking small sips of water. He works at the big building with the blue windows. He fixes computers. And it's just you and your dad who live here? She nodded. Since Mommy went to heaven when I was a baby. Ray's eyes fell on a wallet on the coffee table, a set of keys hanging by the door, a phone charger plugged into the wall. No. One intending to abandon their child leaves their wallet behind. Sadie, did your dad say anything else before he left? Did he seem worried or in a hurry? Sadie thought for a moment, absent-mindedly stroking Mr. Hoppy's worn ear. His phone made a beeping sound. He looked at it and his face got all serious. Then he said he needed to get milk and he'd be right back. Her voice grew smaller, but he didn't come back. The sound of sirens approached outside. Ray squeezed Sadie's small hand. I'm going to help find your dad, Sadie. That's a promise. Hope flickered across her face. Really? Really? But first we need to get you feeling better. As paramedics entered the house, Ray stepped aside to brief them quietly. When he turned back, he found Sadie watching him with a gaze too knowing for her 6 years. The other kids at school, she said softly. Some of them, their daddies, even don't come back. Their mommies say the daddies didn't want them anymore. Her chin trembled slightly. Did my daddy not want me anymore? Ray knelt before her, meeting those searching blue eyes. Sadie, I don't know exactly what happened to your dad yet, but I know this, everything in this, house tells me he didn't plan to leave you, and I'm going to find out the truth. As the paramedics prepared to transport Sadie to the hospital, Ray watched her clutch Mr. Hoppy tightly to her chest. In 15 years of police work, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and every instinct told him that Kyle Parker hadn't abandoned his daughter. Something had prevented him from coming home. The pediatric ward of Detroit Memorial Hospital was painted in cheerful blues and yellows, with cartoon animals dancing across the walls. It should have been comforting, but as Ray watched Sadie being examined by a kind-faced doctor, he saw only fear in her eyes. You're doing great, Sadie, Dr. Chen encouraged as she gently pressed on the little girl's distended abdomen. Does it hurt when I touch here? Sadie nodded, clutching Mr. Hoppy tighter. We'll need to run some tests, Dr. Chen told Ray, quietly. She's dehydrated and malnourished, and this abdominal distension concerns me. As Sadie was wheeled away for tests, a woman in a neat gray suit approached Ray in the hallway. Officer Monroe, I'm Meredith Wilson from Child Protective Services. Ray had been expecting this. Any case involving a potentially abandoned child automatically triggered CPS involvement. What can you tell me about the situation? Meredith asked, flipping open a notepad. Ray shared what little he knew. Sadie alone for 12 days, the father's unexplained disappearance, and the curious details of personal items left behind. Have you filed a missing persons report for the father? She asked. It's being processed now. Kyle Parker, 29, works at Tech Solutions downtown. Meredith made notes, her expression professionally neutral. And the mother? Deceased since Sadie was an infant, according to the child. Meredith sighed, a brief crack in her professional demeanor. While you investigate, we need to find temporary placement for Sadie. Once she's medically cleared, of course. The words landed heavily on Ray. In his experience, once a child entered the system, the machinery of bureaucracy took over, often with little regard for individual circumstances. I'd like to stay involved in this case, Ray said firmly. Meredith raised an eyebrow. That's not standard procedure for patrol officers. I made her a promise, Ray replied simply. Something in his tone must have resonated with Meredith. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. I'll keep you informed. When Sadie returned from her tests, Ray was waiting. He'd brought her a small stuffed police dog from the hospital gift shop. This is Officer Paws, Ray introduced. I thought he might keep Mr. Hoppy company. Sadie's tired face brightened momentarily as she accepted the gift. Thank you, she whispered. Sadie, this is Ms. Wilson. She's going to help find you a safe place to stay while I look for your dad. Fear flashed across Sadie's face. Can I go home? What if Daddy comes back and I'm not? There. Ray exchanged glances with Meredith before answering carefully. I'll leave a note at your house with my phone number, so if your dad comes home, he can call me right away. Sadie seemed to consider this, her small fingers nervously petting Officer Paws. Promise you won't stop looking. I promise, Ray assured her. Later that evening, after Sadie had been settled in the hospital for overnight observation, Ray returned to the Parker house. He left his contact information on the door as promised, though he doubted Kyle would simply reappear. The house felt different now, less mysterious, but more ominous. Ray moved methodically through the rooms, looking for any clues to Kyle's disappearance. In the kitchen, a calendar hung on the refrigerator, marked with work shifts and Sadie's swim lesson notations. The day Kyle disappeared had nothing unusual noted. Ray checked the landlines. Answering machine. 3 messages, 2 from Kyle's workplace asking why he hadn't shown up for his shift, and 1 from Sadie's school about her absence. Nothing suggested Kyle had planned to leave. In the bedroom, Ray found Kyle's dresser still full of clothes, his toothbrush in the bathroom, his prescription medication for seasonal allergies half empty on the shelf. As Ray prepared to leave, his flashlight beam caught something under the sofa. Kyle's cell phone, its battery dead. No one voluntarily leaves without their phone in today's world. Outside, Ray sat in his patrol car, turning over the facts. A single father disappears suddenly, leaving his wallet, keys, and phone behind. His child is left alone for nearly 2 weeks. This wasn't abandonment. This was something else entirely. Ray started his car with renewed determination. Tomorrow he would visit Kyle's workplace. Someone. There might know something. As he drove away, he glanced back at the little blue house, its windows dark and silent, holding secrets he was now determined to uncover. For Sadie's sake. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds as Sadie awoke, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar surroundings. She clutched Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws close, the events of yesterday slowly coming back to her. The nice policeman, the doctors, the lady in the gray suit who asked so many questions. Dr. Chen arrived with a bright smile and a breakfast tray. Good morning, Sadie. How's that tummy? Feeling today? Still hurts, Sadie admitted quietly. And it feels bigger. The doctor's smile remained, but her eyes showed concern as she examined Sadie's abdomen. We're going to do a few more tests today to figure out what's making your tummy uncomfortable. Down the hall, Ray Monroe showed his badge to the nurse at the station. Any update on Sadie Parker? The doctor ordered additional tests, the nurse replied. They're still trying to determine the cause of the abdominal distension. Ray nodded, his mind already on his next stop. Tech Solutions occupied 3 floors of a downtown office building with gleaming blue windows, just as Sadie had described. At the reception desk, Ray identified himself and asked to speak with Kyle Parker's supervisor. Minutes later, he was seated across from Marcus Jenkins, IT department manager. Kyle's one of my best technicians, Marcus explained. When he didn't show up for work, I called him repeatedly. It's completely out of character. What was his state of mind the last time you saw him? Marcus considered this. Tired. He'd been picking up extra shifts. His daughter had been sick. Ear infection, I think. And the medical bills were piling up. Any enemies, problems with co-workers? None. Everyone likes Kyle. He's quiet, keeps to himself, but he's reliable. Marcus hesitated. Well, there was one thing. The day before he disappeared, he seemed worried about something. Checked his phone constantly. Ray leaned forward. Did he mention what was concerning him? No, but... Marcus lowered his voice. I overheard him on the phone saying something like, I can't pay that much all at once. Sounded like some kind of financial trouble. Ray made notes. Financial pressure could explain a lot, but not the abandoned wallet and phone, not the missing person. Meanwhile, at Detroit Children's Hospital, Meredith Wilson sat beside Sadie's bed reviewing paperwork. Sadie, you'll be staying with a foster family for a little while. The Hendersons have a nice house with other children to play with. But what if my... Daddy comes home? Sadie asked, her voice small. Meredith's expression softened. Officer Monroe is looking for your father. The Hendersons know this is just temporary. In the doorway, a nurse whispered to another, Classic abandonment case. Poor thing. The second nurse shook her head. I see it. All the time. Single parent, financial stress, child with health issues. It gets to be too much. Sadie, pretending to be occupied with her stuffed animals, heard every word. Her small fingers gripped Mr. Hoppy tighter as tears welled in her eyes. That afternoon, Ray visited Kyle's bank. The account records showed regular deposits from Tech Solutions and consistent withdrawals for rent, utilities, and groceries. The final transaction was at Brightway Supermarket, the night Kyle disappeared. The supermarket's manager agreed to review security footage from that night. Ray watched the grainy video showing Kyle entering the store at 7:42 p.m., looking at his phone repeatedly. At 7:51 p.m., Kyle received a call, his expression changing dramatically. He abandoned his half-filled shopping cart and hurried out, never reaching the milk section. Can you follow him in the parking lot? Cameras? Ray asked. The manager switched to exterior footage. Kyle rushed to his car, a blue sedan, and drove away quickly. Ray scribbled down the time and direction. I need a copy of this footage. As evening fell, Ray returned to the hospital to find Sadie being prepared for discharge into CPS custody. The little girl looked even smaller in the wheelchair, her distended belly more pronounced against her thin frame. Officer Ray. Her face brightened momentarily. Did you find my daddy? Ray knelt beside her. Not yet, Sadie, but I found out he went to the store just like he told you, and then something happened that made him leave in a hurry. I'm going to find out what. Meredith appeared with discharge papers. The Hendersons are waiting downstairs. As Sadie was wheeled away, she looked back at Ray, her eyes full of questions he couldn't yet answer. Outside the hospital, Ray sat in his patrol car, reviewing his notes. Kyle Parker had left the supermarket in a hurry after receiving a phone call. The next step was clear. Obtain Kyle's phone records to identify that crucial call. What had been so urgent that it had kept a devoted father from returning to his daughter? Henderson home sat on a quiet street lined with maple trees just beginning to turn autumn colors. From the outside, it looked welcoming. A two-story house with a well-kept yard and cheerful yellow door. Sadie clutched her small backpack containing Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws as Meredith led her up the walkway. The Hendersons have 3 other foster children, Meredith explained gently. They're very experienced. Mrs. Henderson opened the door with a warm smile that didn't quite hide the tired lines around her eyes. You must be Sadie. Welcome, sweetheart. Inside, Sadie was introduced to the other children, twin boys around 8 and a teenage girl who barely looked up from her phone. The house smelled of spaghetti sauce and laundry detergent. Dinner's in 20 minutes, Mrs. Henderson announced. Emma, can you show Sadie where she'll be sleeping? The teenager sighed but led Sadie upstairs to a small bedroom with bunk beds. You get the bottom bunk. Don't touch my stuff on the shelves. Left alone, Sadie carefully placed Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws on her assigned bed, whispering to them, It's just for a little while. Officer Ray is going to find Daddy. At dinner, Sadie pushed pasta around her plate, her stomach too uncomfortable to eat much. Mr. Henderson noticed but didn't press her. It takes time to settle in, he said kindly. No pressure. That night, curled in the unfamiliar bed, Sadie listened to Emma's steady breathing from the top bunk and tried not to cry. Her tummy hurt worse at night, and strange dreams of wriggling things inside her made her whimper in her sleep. Across town, Ray Monroe sat in his living room surrounded by case notes, his dinner untouched. The phone records had come through. The call that sent Kyle racing from the supermarket came from Detroit Memorial Hospital, the same hospital where Sadie was later treated. "This can't be coincidence," Ray muttered, reaching for his phone. A hospital administrator confirmed a call had been placed to Kyle Parker on the night in question, but couldn't reveal more without a warrant. Ray's captain had already warned him that morning. "You're spending too much time on this case, Monroe. It's not even your jurisdiction anymore. Missing persons took over the father's case, and the kid is with CPS. Let it go." But Ray couldn't let it go. Not after seeing the fear in Sadie's eyes. Not after promising he would find her father. The next morning, Ray called in a favor with a detective friend in missing persons and obtained the warrant for the hospital records. What he discovered sent a chill through him. On the night Kyle disappeared, the hospital had called to inform him of a car accident involving his brother, listed as Kyle's emergency contact. But Kyle had no brother. His emergency contact was his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Davis. Something wasn't adding up, and Ray was more determined than ever to solve the puzzle. For Sadie, who woke up in a strange bed with tears on her cheeks and a whispered "Daddy" on her lips, Ray arrived at Detroit Memorial Hospital early the next morning, warrant in hand. The hospital administrator, a stern woman named Ms. Patel, reluctantly led him to the records department. The call to Kyle Parker was placed at 7:48 p.m. on October 3rd, she confirmed, reviewing the records. It concerned a John Doe brought in after a car accident. The patient had Mr. Parker's number in his phone contacts, listed under ICE, in case of emergency. "I need to see this John Doe," Ray said firmly. Ms. Patel hesitated. "He's been transferred to the long-term care facility on the 4th floor. He's still unidentified." Ray followed her through a maze of corridors to a quiet wing where patients in various states of recovery rested in dimly lit rooms. At the end of the hall, Ms. Patel stopped outside room 412. "He hasn't regained consciousness," she warned before opening the door. Ray stepped inside, his heart hammering against his ribs. In the bed lay a man connected to various monitoring equipment, his face partially obscured by an oxygen mask. Despite the bruising and swelling, Ray immediately recognized him from the family photos in Sadie's house, Kyle Parker. Meanwhile, Sadie sat in an unfamiliar classroom trying to ignore the curious stares from other first graders. The Hendersons had enrolled her in the local elementary school while her case proceeded. "We have a new friend joining us today," Mrs. Bennett, the teacher, announced cheerfully. "This is Sadie. Let's make her feel welcome." At recess, Sadie sat alone on a bench, her hand unconsciously resting on her swollen middle. A small girl with bright red hair approached. "I'm Lily," she introduced herself. "Do you want to play hopscotch?" Sadie shook her head. "My tummy hurts." Lily nodded with the sage understanding of a fellow 6-year-old. "When my tummy hurts, my mom makes me ginger tea. Is your mom going to make you tea after school?" "My mom's in heaven," Sadie replied matter-of-factly. "And my dad," her voice faltered. "He's lost right now." Lily's eyes widened. "Like in the grocery store when I can't find my mom." "Kind of," Sadie agreed, finding this comparison oddly comforting. After school, Mrs. Henderson noticed Sadie's discomfort and scheduled another doctor's appointment. The hospital called. "They want to do more tests on your tummy." That evening, the art therapist at the Henderson home asked the children to draw their families. The twins created chaotic scenes with stick figures everywhere. Emma sketched a solitary figure with headphones. Sadie carefully drew 2 tall figures and a small one between them. One tall figure had sad eyes, and the other wore what looked like a blue hat. "Who are they?" the therapist asked gently. Sadie pointed to each figure. "That's me. That's my daddy with the sad eyes. And that's Officer Ray with his police hat. He's finding my daddy." The therapist made notes, her expression concerned as she misinterpreted the drawing, potential trauma involving 2 male figures. Back at the hospital, Ray stood beside Kyle's bed, pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. The car accident had occurred just blocks from the supermarket. Kyle, rushing to the scene after receiving the call about a brother, had himself become a victim. And without identification, he'd become just another John Doe. For nearly 2 weeks, father and daughter had been separated by nothing more than missing information and bureaucratic oversight. "I found him, Sadie," Ray whispered to the quiet room. "Now I just need to bring you back to each other." "What do you mean you can't just take my word for it?" Ray's frustration echoed in the hospital administrator's office. "I'm telling you, that man is Kyle Parker." Ms. Patel remained composed behind her desk. "Officer Monroe, I understand your conviction, but we have protocols. Without official identification, fingerprints, family confirmation, or documentation, we cannot simply change a patient's status from John Doe. His daughter is in foster care because everyone thinks he abandoned her," Ray argued. "Meanwhile, he's been here all along." "Then bring the daughter for identification," Ms. Patel suggested, "or provide fingerprint confirmation from police records." Ray ran a hand through his hair. "He doesn't have a criminal record, so no fingerprints on file, and I can't bring Sadie here until I have official confirmation. CPS won't allow it." It was a maddening circle of bureaucracy, each solution blocked by another requirement. Across town, Sadie sat on the edge of the Hendersons' backyard swing, not moving, just watching the other children play. Her stomach pain had intensified overnight, and she'd barely touched her breakfast. "You should eat something, sweetie," Mrs. Henderson had encouraged, concern evident in her voice. But the thought of food made Sadie's stomach churn. She'd tried explaining the strange sensation, like something wriggling inside, but the adults just exchanged worried glances. An elderly woman appeared at the fence separating the Henderson property from the neighboring yard. "Hello there," she called to Sadie. "I'm Mrs. Patterson. Would you like to see my garden?" Mrs. Patterson's garden was a wonderland of autumn flowers and whimsical decorations, stone rabbits, mushroom statues, and a small fairy house. Sadie found herself smiling for the first time in days. "I have grandchildren about your age," Mrs. Patterson said, as she showed Sadie how to deadhead the marigolds. "They visit on weekends." There was something calming about the old woman's presence, a gentleness that reminded Sadie of the way her father would listen when she told him about her day. "My tummy hurts," Sadie confided suddenly, her small hand pressing against her distended middle. Mrs. Patterson nodded thoughtfully. "My grandson had a tummy like that once. Turned out he had tiny bugs inside from drinking creek water on a camping trip." "Bugs?" Sadie's eyes widened in alarm. "Tiny ones the doctors fixed right up," Mrs. Patterson assured her. "Nothing to be scared of." Later that afternoon, Ray visited the impound lot where Kyle's car had been towed after the accident. The blue sedan was dented on the driver's side, the window shattered. Inside, Ray found Kyle's gym bag, some mail, and, wedged under the passenger seat, a small leather case. Inside was Kyle's work identification badge with his photo and full name clearly displayed. "Finally," Ray breathed, clutching the evidence that would convince the hospital. As dusk fell, Sadie stood at the bedroom window in the Henderson home, watching the streetlights flicker on. "Officer Ray will find Daddy," she whispered to Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws, arranged on her pillow. "He promised." From her bunk above, Emma spoke unexpectedly. "My mom promised she'd come back too." Sadie looked up at the dangling arm of the teenager. "Did she?" "No," Emma replied flatly. "But maybe your dad's different." Sadie clutched her stomach as another wave of pain rolled through. "He is," she insisted, though doubt had begun to creep into her heart. "He would never leave me on purpose." That night, as she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, Sadie dreamed of her father reaching for her across a wide, dark river, his sad eyes never leaving hers. Miles away, in room 412, Kyle Parker's fingers twitched against the hospital sheets, as if reaching for something or someone just beyond his grasp. Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Ray presented Kyle's ID badge to Ms. Patel. Her professional composure cracked slightly as she examined the evidence. "This is certainly compelling," she admitted. I'll start the process of updating his records immediately. How soon can he be officially identified as Kyle Parker? Ray pressed. Ms. Patel hesitated. There's another complication. Without insurance information, John Doe, Mr. Parker, was scheduled for transfer to county long-term care tomorrow. Once he's there, changing his status becomes even more difficult. Ray felt a surge of urgency. We need to stop that transfer. I'll need approval from the hospital director, Ms. Patel replied, and that could take time. Time was exactly what they didn't have. As Ray navigated the hospital's bureaucratic maze, he encountered an unexpected ally, Nurse Sophia, who had been caring for Kyle. I've noticed changes in his condition, she told Ray. Increased brain activity, especially during morning rounds. He might be closer to consciousness than the doctors realize. Nurse Sophia agreed to delay the transfer paperwork while Ray pursued official identification. But I can only stall until tomorrow morning, she warned. Across town, Meredith Wilson sat across from the Hendersons at their kitchen table, reviewing Sadie's case file. We've located a potential permanent placement, Meredith explained. A couple in Grand Rapids with experience handling children with medical issues. Grand Rapids? That's hours away, Mrs. Henderson observed. Meredith nodded. I understand your concern, but without the father in the picture, we need to consider Sadie's long-term welfare. And if her father is found? Mr. Henderson asked. After this much time, Meredith's tone conveyed her professional skepticism. Even if he were to reappear, there would be serious questions about his fitness as a guardian. In the backyard, unaware of the conversation that would shape her future, Sadie sat with Mrs. Patterson, helping to plant bulbs that would bloom in spring. My daddy and I planted flowers once, Sadie recalled, her small fingers carefully patting soil around a tulip bulb. He said they were sleeping underground until they were ready to wake up. Mrs. Patterson smiled. That's exactly right. Some things need time in the dark before they can grow toward the light. Sadie considered this, her hand unconsciously moving to her painful stomach. Mrs. Patterson, do you think my daddy might be like the flowers? Just waiting somewhere until he can come back? The elderly woman's eyes softened. I believe people who love us always find their way back, one way or another. Later that afternoon, Sadie's discomfort became impossible to ignore. Mrs. Henderson found her curled on her bed, tears streaming down her face. My tummy really hurts, Sadie whimpered. At the urgent care clinic, the doctor examined Sadie's distended abdomen with growing concern. We need more comprehensive tests, he told Mrs. Henderson. I'm referring her back to the hospital. As evening descended, Ray stood beside Kyle's bed, frustrated by another day of bureaucratic hurdles. He'd gained an extension on the transfer, but still lacked the authority to reunite Sadie with her father. I know you're in there, Kyle, Ray said to the unconscious man. Your daughter needs you to wake up. On impulse, Ray pulled out his phone and showed Kyle the photograph he'd taken from the Parker home. Sadie beaming at the camera, missing her front teeth, her arms wrapped around her father's neck. Sadie's waiting for you, Ray continued. She never stopped believing you'd come back. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, unchanged, until Ray mentioned Sadie's name again. A small spike appeared on the brain. Activity monitor. Then another. Nurse Sophia rushed into the room. What happened? The monitors at the station showed a change. I was talking about his daughter, Ray explained, hope rising in his chest. Keep talking, Sophia encouraged, watching the monitors closely. Ray leaned closer to Kyle. Sadie needs you. She's sick, Kyle. Her stomach is distended and the doctors aren't sure why. She's been so brave, but she needs her dad. The monitors spiked again, stronger this time. And then, a miracle. Kyle's fingers twitched, curling slightly as if trying to grasp something. Nurse Sophia pressed the call button for the doctor, her eyes wide. He's responding. He hears you. For the first time in 2 weeks, Ray felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. Kyle Parker was still there, fighting to return to his daughter. Now Ray just needed to bring Sadie to him before the system pulled them further apart. The hospital corridor buzzed with activity as Dr. Abrams examined Kyle's latest neurological readings. These patterns suggest increasing awareness, he explained to Ray. He's not fully conscious, but he's responding to stimuli, especially to mentions of his daughter. So you officially recognize him as Kyle Parker now? Ray pressed. Dr. Abrams nodded. With the ID badge and these responses, yes. I've signed the paperwork confirming his identity. The John Doe designation has been removed from our system. Relief washed over Ray. Thank you. Now we need to bring his daughter to see him. I can authorize a visit on medical grounds, Dr. Abrams offered. His responses to her might accelerate his recovery. Ray's phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Henderson. Sadie at Detroit Memorial for tests. Severe abdominal pain. ER dept. An incredible coincidence, or perhaps something more. Father and daughter, separated by circumstance, now under the same roof once again. In the pediatric emergency room, Sadie lay curled on her side, face pale with pain. Mrs. Henderson sat beside her, stroking her hair gently. The doctor will be in soon, she assured Sadie. They're going to figure out what's making your tummy hurt. Sadie nodded weakly, clutching Mr. Hoppy. Mrs. Henderson had remembered to bring the stuffed rabbit, understanding how important the connection to home was for the little girl. When Ray appeared in the doorway, Sadie's eyes widened. Officer Ray. Hey there, brave girl, he greeted her, his smile gentle. I heard you weren't feeling so good. Did you find my daddy yet? The question came immediately, hope and fear mingling in her voice. Ray exchanged glances with Mrs. Henderson before kneeling beside Sadie's bed. Yes, Sadie, I found him. The change in Sadie's expression was immediate, like sunshine breaking through clouds. Where is he? Can I see him? Why didn't he come home? Your dad had an accident the night he went to get milk, Ray explained carefully. He's been in this very hospital all this time, but nobody knew who he was, because he didn't have his ID with him. Sadie struggled to sit up, wincing at the movement. Is he okay? He's getting better, Ray assured her. He's sleeping a lot right now, but the doctors say he might wake up soon. And guess what? When I showed him your picture and said your name, his fingers moved. He knows you're waiting for him. Tears filled Sadie's eyes. He didn't leave me on purpose? No, sweetheart. He's been trying to get back to you this whole time. Mrs. Henderson wiped away her own tears. I'll need to call Meredith about this development. I've already spoken with her, Ray said. Dr. Abrams has authorized a visit to Kyle's room once Sadie's been examined. When the pediatrician arrived to examine Sadie, Ray stepped into the hallway to give them privacy. His phone rang. Captain Reeves, his supervisor. Monroe, what's this I hear about you still working the Parker case? You were told to hand it over to missing persons. I found him, Captain, Ray replied. Kyle Parker has been in Detroit Memorial as a John Doe since the night he disappeared. He's beginning to regain consciousness. A long pause followed. Well, I'll be damned. Good work, Monroe. There's more, Ray continued. His daughter is here too, being treated for abdominal issues. They've been in the same building without knowing it. After the examination, the pediatrician pulled Mrs. Henderson aside while a nurse stayed with Sadie. We're ordering an ultrasound and comprehensive blood work. There are several possible causes for this type of distension and pain. Ray approached them. Doctor, once you've run your tests, Dr. Abrams in neurology has authorized a visit to her father's room. It could be beneficial for both of them. The pediatrician considered this. Brief visit only, depending on her condition, and we'll need her test results before making any decisions about treatment. An hour later, after the ultrasound, Sadie was wheeled toward the elevator that would take her to her father's floor. Her face was a mixture of nervousness and anticipation. What if he doesn't recognize me? She whispered to Ray, who walked alongside her wheelchair. He will, Ray assured her. A father always knows his child. As the elevator doors opened on the 4th floor, Sadie gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. After nearly 2 weeks of separation and uncertainty, she was finally going to see her father again. And perhaps at the sound of his daughter's voice, Kyle Parker would find his way back to consciousness at last. The journey down the fourth-floor corridor seemed endless to Sadie. Each room they passed increased her nervous anticipation. What would her daddy look like? Would he speak to her? Ray had said he was sleeping, but it sounded like a different kind of sleep than usual. Nurse Sophia waited outside room 412, her kind face breaking into a smile when she saw them approach. "You must be Sadie," she said, kneeling to the little girl's level. "Your dad has been waiting for you." "Even while he's sleeping?" Sadie asked. "Especially while he's sleeping," Sophia confirmed. "Sometimes people can hear things even when they can't open their eyes yet." Before entering, Ray knelt beside Sadie's wheelchair. "Your dad has some machines helping him get better, and there might be some tubes and wires. It looks scary, but it's all helping him." Sadie nodded solemnly. "I'm not scared." When they wheeled her into the room, Sadie's eyes immediately found her father. Kyle Parker lay still against white sheets, an oxygen mask covering part of his face, monitors beeping steadily beside him. Despite the tubes and bandages, he was unmistakably her daddy. "Daddy?" Her voice came out as a whisper. Ray gently pushed her wheelchair closer to the bed. Nurse Sophia adjusted Kyle's position slightly, removing the oxygen mask temporarily so Sadie could see his face better. "You can hold his hand if you want," Sophia encouraged. With trembling fingers, Sadie reached out and placed her small hand in her father's larger one. "Daddy, it's me. It's Sadie." For a moment, nothing happened. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, and Kyle remained motionless. Then, almost imperceptibly, his fingers curled around Sadie's. "He squeezed my hand," Sadie exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "He knows it's me." Ray and Nurse Sophia exchanged meaningful glances over Sadie's head. This was a significant response. "Keep talking to him," Sophia encouraged. "He can hear you." Sadie leaned closer, momentarily forgetting her own discomfort. "I've been staying with the Hendersons. They're nice, but they're not you. And Officer Ray found you, just like he promised." Her voice grew softer. "I knew you didn't leave me on purpose." As she spoke, the monitors began showing increased activity. Kyle's eyelids fluttered slightly. Dr. Abrams entered quietly, observing the scene with professional interest. "Remarkable," he murmured to Ray. "His brain activity has increased significantly since she arrived." Sadie continued her one-sided conversation, telling her father about Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws, about Mrs. Patterson's garden, and even about her painful stomach. "The doctors are trying to figure out why my tummy hurts and got so big," she explained, as though updating him on routine events. "Mrs. Henderson says they'll make better." Suddenly, without warning, Kyle's eyes opened, just a crack at first, then wider. Unfocused and confused, his gaze drifted around the room before settling on Sadie. Recognition dawned slowly in his expression. His lips moved, though no sound emerged. "Daddy?" Sadie's voice quavered with emotion. Kyle struggled to speak, his voice a raspy whisper after weeks of disuse. "Sunshine." It was his special nickname for her. Tears spilled down Sadie's cheeks as she squeezed his hand tighter. "You came back." Dr. Abrams moved forward quickly, checking Kyle's vitals. "This is an excellent sign, but he needs to rest. The awakening process can be taxing." "Can I stay?" Sadie pleaded, her eyes never leaving her father's face. "For a little while," Dr. Abrams conceded. "But you have your own recovery to consider." As if on cue, Sadie winced, her free hand moving to her distended abdomen. The momentary excitement had distracted her from her discomfort, but the pain had returned. Ray noticed immediately. "I think we should get you back downstairs for those test results, Sadie. We can visit your dad again soon." Kyle's eyes, though heavy with exhaustion, showed alarm at Sadie's obvious pain. He tried to speak again, his concern evident despite his weakness. "It's okay, Daddy," Sadie assured him, showing bravery beyond her years. The doctors are helping me too. I'll come back soon. As they prepared to leave, Kyle managed to keep his eyes open, watching his daughter until she, disappeared from view. The effort of awakening had drained him, but a new determination had taken root. His daughter needed him, and somehow, he would find the strength to recover. In the elevator, Sadie looked up at Ray, her expression a mixture of joy and lingering pain. "He remembers me," she said simply. Ray smiled, though concern for her health tempered his relief. "Of course he does. You're unforgettable, Sadie Parker." The pediatrician's office felt suddenly cold as he reviewed Sadie's test results with Ray and Mrs. Henderson. Sadie herself had been taken for an additional scan, accompanied by a cheerful nurse who promised stickers afterward. "We've identified the cause of Sadie's abdominal distension," Dr. Lin explained, pointing to images on his computer screen. "She has a severe parasitic infection, likely from consuming contaminated food or water during the time she was alone." Mrs. Henderson gasped softly. "Is it serious?" "It's concerning but treatable," Dr. Lin assured them. "We'll start her on anti-parasitic medication immediately. The good news is that children are remarkably resilient. With proper treatment and nutrition, she should recover fully." Ray felt a weight lift from his shoulders. At least now they knew what they were fighting. "What about her father?" Mrs. Henderson asked. "I understand he's regained consciousness?" "Partially," Ray confirmed. He recognized Sadie, spoke briefly, but he has a long recovery ahead. Dr. Lin frowned. "Slightly. I'll consult with neurology about coordinating their care. For now, Sadie will need to remain hospitalized for at least a few days while we begin treatment." As they left the office, Ray's phone rang. Captain Reeves again. "Monroe, we need to talk. My office, 1 hour." Ray recognized nothing good would come from this meeting. Upstairs, Kyle Parker drifted between consciousness and sleep, each awakening bringing greater clarity. During a lucid moment, he managed to ask Nurse Sophia the question burning in his mind. "Sadie, sick?" Sophia adjusted his IV line. "The doctors are taking good care of her. She has an infection that caused her stomach pain, but they're treating it now." Kyle's eyes filled with anguish. "My fault." "No," Sophia said firmly. "Accidents happen, Kyle. You were injured trying to help someone else." His brow furrowed in confusion. "Someone called brother. Accident." Sophia made a note to inform Dr. Abrams. Kyle was beginning to remember the night of his disappearance. An hour later, Ray sat across from Captain Reeves, tension thick in the air. "You disobeyed a direct order to hand off this case," Reeves began without preamble. "Continued an unauthorized investigation, and apparently made promises to a minor without departmental approval." "I found her father," Ray countered, "a man who would still be a nameless patient if I'd followed protocol." "Your job is to follow protocol, Monroe." Reeves leaned forward. "You're suspended pending review. Badge and gun, please." The words hit like physical blows. Ray had expected reprimand, not suspension. Wordlessly, he surrendered his badge and service weapon. "The Parker case has been officially transferred to Family Services," Reeves continued. "You are to have no further contact with either Sadie or Kyle Parker. Captain, you can't." "I can and I am. This conversation is over, Monroe." Meanwhile, Sadie had returned to her hospital room. The reality of her diagnosis explained in child-appropriate terms. "There are tiny bugs in your tummy that shouldn't be there. The medicine will make them go away." Meredith Wilson arrived shortly after, her expression professionally sympathetic as she spoke with Mrs. Henderson in the hallway. "Despite these developments, we need to continue with placement planning," Meredith explained. "Mr. Parker's recovery timeline is uncertain, and he'll face significant challenges as a single parent with medical issues." "But they've found each other," Mrs. Henderson protested. "Surely that changes things." "The priority remains Sadie's well-being," Meredith replied. "We have a potential permanent placement opportunity with a couple experienced in caring for children with medical needs." Neither noticed Sadie sitting up in bed. straining to hear their conversation through the partially open door. Her young mind grasped enough to understand the terrible possibility. They might still keep her from her father. That night, as the hospital settled into its quiet routine, Sadie made a decision. Clutching Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws, she carefully disconnected the monitoring devices as she'd seen a nurse do earlier when changing equipment. Then, in her hospital gown and slippers, she slipped from her room. She knew her father was on the 4th floor. She just needed to find him. But the hospital was vast and confusing. After wandering down several identical corridors, Sadie found herself completely lost. Her stomach pain, temporarily controlled by medication, began to return as anxiety mounted. Outside, an autumn storm had arrived, rain lashing against the windows. Thunder rumbled, making Sadie jump. Frightened and increasingly unwell, she curled up in a corner of what turned out to be a rarely used waiting area. Her stuffed animals clutched tightly to her chest. "I just want my daddy," she whispered, tears streaming down her face as fever began to rise once more. The hospital erupted into controlled chaos when Sadie's absence was discovered during morning rounds. Security personnel reviewed camera footage while nurses checked every floor, calling Sadie's name. Ray learned about the situation from Nurse Sophia, who called him despite the captain's orders. Protocol be damned. A child was missing. She couldn't have gone far, Sophia told him. She's still recovering, and the hospital is secured at night. Ray rushed to the hospital in civilian clothes, his instincts as sharp. Without the badge, he knew something others didn't. Sadie would be trying to reach her father. As he approached the 4th floor, thunder crashed outside, rattling the windows. A flash of lightning illuminated a small corridor leading to an old waiting area rarely used since the West Wing renovation. There, curled in a corner, Ray found her. "Sadie," he called softly, approaching slowly so as not to frighten her. She looked up, her face flushed with fever, clutching her stuffed animals. "Officer Ray," she whispered. "I got lost." "I see that," Ray replied gently, kneeling beside her. "Everyone's looking for you. I was trying to find my daddy." Her voice broke. "They're going to take me away from him again. I heard them talking." Ray carefully lifted her, noting with concern how warm she felt. "Let's get you back to your room first. You need your medicine. Promise you won't leave, Sadie?" asked, her small arms wrapping around his neck. "I promise." Within minutes, Sadie was back in her hospital bed, doctors and nurses checking her condition. The fever had spiked again, and her stomach pain had returned with greater intensity. The stress and physical exertion set back her treatment. Dr. Lynn explained to Mrs. Henderson and Meredith Wilson, who had been called in, "We need to adjust her medication and ensure complete rest." When they tried to make Ray leave, Sadie became so agitated that her monitors alarmed. Dr. Lynn made a quick decision. "He stays for now. Her emotional state affects her physical recovery." Meredith pulled Ray aside. "Officer Monroe, I understand you've been suspended." "It doesn't change the facts," Ray replied. "Sadie and her father belong together. The system failed them both, and now you're considering separating them permanently." Meredith's professional facade cracked slightly. "It's more complicated than that. Mr. Parker faces months of recovery and rehabilitation. Sadie needs stability, medical follow-up, and consistent care." "Then help them get that together," Ray urged. "Instead of looking for reasons to separate them, find ways to support them." Later that morning, when Sadie's condition had stabilized, Ray sat beside her bed as she picked at her breakfast. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "What if they don't let me live with Daddy again?" "Sadie," Ray began carefully, "I want you to understand something important. Your dad didn't leave you on purpose. He was in an accident while trying to help someone. And now he's fighting with everything he has to get better for you. But what if it's not enough?" Her blue eyes, too knowing for her 6 years, searched his face for truth. Ray took her small hand. "I won't lie. To you, there are challenges ahead. Your dad will need time to recover. You're still getting better too. But I promise you this, I will do everything possible to help you stay together. A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. Nurse Sophia entered, pushing a wheelchair with Kyle Parker sitting in it, looking pale but determined. Daddy! Sadie's face transformed with joy. Someone insisted on seeing you, Sophia explained with a smile. Dr. Abrams approved a short visit. Kyle's recovery was far from complete. His speech was still halting, his movements unsteady. But his eyes were clear, and focused entirely on his daughter. Sunshine, he managed, his voice rough but full of emotion. Ray stepped back, allowing Sophia to wheel Kyle closer to Sadie's bed. Father and daughter reached for each other's hands simultaneously. They told me, "You're sick," Kyle said slowly. "Because I wasn't there." "It's not your fault, Daddy," Sadie insisted. "Officer Ray told me about your accident." Kyle turned to Ray, gratitude evident in his expression. "Thank you for finding her, for believing." "Just doing my job," Ray replied, though they all knew it had become much more than that. As Kyle and Sadie talked, him haltingly, her excitedly despite her illness, Ray observed the undeniable bond between them. This was what the system needed to see, not just a medical patient and a case number, but a father and daughter whose love for each other was their greatest strength. When Kyle finally had to return to his room, exhausted by the effort but visibly uplifted, Sadie seemed transformed. The fear had left her eyes, replaced by determination that mirrored her father's. "We're going to be okay," she told Ray with surprising certainty, "because we found each other again." For the first time since this case began, Ray believed she might be right. Chapter 14. Preparing for Battle. Golden morning light filtered through the hospital windows as Ray entered Sadie's room, carrying a small pink backpack. "Mrs. Patterson sent this for you," he explained, placing it on her bed. "She said every brave girl needs her favorite things." Sadie unzipped the backpack with growing excitement. Inside were her favorite pajamas, her special hair brush with rainbow bristles, and a handmade card from Mrs. Patterson featuring pressed flowers from the garden they'd worked in together. "She remembered everything I like," Sadie marveled. The past 3 days had brought remarkable progress. The anti-parasitic medication had begun working, reducing her abdominal distension and fever. Dr. Lin was cautiously optimistic about her recovery. Upstairs, Kyle was making his own determined progress. Physical therapy twice daily, speech exercises, cognitive tests. He tackled each challenge with single-minded focus. His motivation was clear to everyone: Sadie. But a different kind of storm was brewing. The family court had scheduled a custody hearing for the following week. Meredith I. Wilson had filed her report recommending that Sadie be placed in long-term foster care until Mr. Parker can demonstrate sufficient recovery and capacity for childcare. Ray, still suspended but refusing to abandon the Parkers, had reached out to every resource he could think of. A former police colleague now practicing family law had agreed to represent Kyle pro bono. Social workers sympathetic to their case had provided guidance on navigating the system. That afternoon, Ray sat beside Kyle's wheelchair in the hospital garden, reviewing their strategy for the hearing. "The judge needs to see that you understand the challenges ahead," Lisa Chen, the attorney, explained. "We're not arguing that your recovery is complete. We're showing that you have a realistic plan for Sadie's care during your rehabilitation." Kyle nodded, his speech improving daily. "Whatever it takes. She's all I have." "The hospital's physical therapist and your neurologist have both agreed to testify about your progress," Lisa continued. "And we've arranged for home health visits after discharge." Ray added, "Mrs. Patterson has offered to help with after-school care. She's being vetted as we speak." Kyle looked at Ray, gratitude evident in his expression. "Why are you doing all this? You lost your job because of us." "Suspended," Ray corrected with a small smile. "Not fired. Not yet, anyway." The truth was more complicated. In the quiet hours of night, Ray had finally confronted the ghosts that drove him, his own daughter, lost to the system years ago when his ex-wife's addiction issues led to a custody battle he couldn't win. By the time he'd gotten his life together, his daughter had been adopted, her record sealed. Finding Sadie, helping her and Kyle, had become his redemption. Meanwhile, Sadie was having her own preparation session with Dr. Harris, the hospital's child psychologist. "The judge might ask you some questions at the hearing," Dr. Harris explained gently. "It's important to answer honestly about how you feel." "I want to be with my daddy," Sadie stated simply. "He didn't leave me on purpose." "And how do you feel about staying with the Hendersons while your dad continues getting stronger?" Sadie considered this. "They're nice, but they're not my family." Later that day, Kyle was wheeled into Sadie's room for their now daily visit. His face lit up at the sight of her sitting up in bed, color returning to her cheeks, her stomach noticeably less distended. "You look better, sunshine," he said, reaching for her hand. "So do you, Daddy," she replied, studying his face closely. "Your words aren't as bumpy today." Kyle laughed, a sound that surprised even. "The speech therapist says I'm her star pupil." As father and daughter talked about their progress and plans, Ray watched from the doorway. The connection between them was palpable, healing each other in ways medicine couldn't. That evening, as Ray was leaving the hospital, his phone rang. "Captain Reeves." "Monroe, I'm only calling because I respect your years of service," the captain began gruffly. "The review board meets tomorrow regarding your suspension. You need to distance yourself from the Parker case if you want any chance of keeping your badge." Ray watched the sunset paint, the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the same sky Sadie and Kyle could see from their hospital windows. "I appreciate the warning, Captain," Ray replied evenly, "but some things are more important than a badge." As he hung up, Ray felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened tomorrow, he knew. He was exactly where he needed to be, helping a father and daughter find their way back to each other, against all odds. The custody hearing was 4 days away. Chapter 15. Coming home. The family court was smaller than Ray had expected, more ordinary. Wooden benches, fluorescent lighting, the smell. Each furniture, polish, and paper. Yet to Sadie, sitting between Mrs. Henderson and Ray, it might as well have been a castle where kings decided the fate of kingdoms. She wore her blue dress, the one that matched her eyes, and clutched Mr. Hoppy tightly. Her stomach was nearly normal size now, the parasitic infection responding well to treatment, but butterflies of nervousness still fluttered inside. "All rise," called the bailiff as Judge Wilson entered, a stern-faced man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. The state's representative spoke first, her voice cool and measured. "Your Honor, while we acknowledge the unfortunate circumstances that separated this family, our priority must be Sadie Parker's long-term welfare. Her father faces months of rehabilitation. His medical bills are substantial. His employment status is uncertain." She gestured toward the documents before the judge. "The state recommends continued foster placement with supervised visitation until Mr. Parker can demonstrate stability and capability. This isn't about intent or emotion, Your Honor. This is about a child's need for consistent care." Sadie's small fingers gripped Ray's hand tighter with each word. Lisa Chen presented their case next, calling Kyle's doctors who testified to his remarkable progress and determination. Mrs. Patterson spoke about her willingness to help with childcare. Even the Hendersons expressed support for reunification with appropriate services. Then, unexpectedly, the courtroom doors opened. Kyle Parker entered, walking slowly with a cane, his steps unsteady but determined. Though the doctors had advised against leaving the hospital, he had insisted on appearing in person. Sadie's breath caught at the sight of her father standing on his own. Their eyes met across the courtroom, and for a moment everything else faded away. The judge allowed Kyle to speak from his seat. His voice was still halting but clear with purpose. "Your Honor, I know. I have challenges ahead. But Sadie and we belong together. We'll face these challenges together." He paused, gathering strength. "I'm her father. It's my job, and to take care of her, not the other way around." But it is our job to love each other. And that we do perfectly. The judge turned to Sadie. Young lady, is there anything you'd like to say? Sadie stood, still clutching Mr. Hoppy. For a moment, she hesitated, looking from her father to Ray to the judge. You didn't come back, she said softly to her father, the words hanging in the silent courtroom. I thought I did something bad. Kyle's eyes filled with tears. Never, sunshine. Never your fault. The judge studied them both, thoughtfully. This is not about love, he said finally. It's about capability. The room held its breath. But sometimes, he continued, with the right support, love creates capability. He closed the file before him. I'm approving a supervised reunification plan. Mr. Parker will retain custody. With regular home health visits, social services check-ins, and the support network outlined in Ms. Chen's proposal. 3 weeks later, Ray pulled into the driveway of the little blue house on Maple Street. The yard had been raked clean of autumn leaves. New curtains hung in the windows. A ramp for Kyle's occasional wheelchair use had been installed alongside the front steps. Sadie burst through the door before he could knock. Officer Ray, come see what we did to my room. Inside, the house was transformed. Not with expensive things, but with care and attention. Kyle moved around the kitchen, with increasing confidence, preparing a simple lunch. Hope you like grilled cheese, he called. It's about all I can manage one-handed, but I'm getting there. Sadie proudly showed Ray her bedroom, now brightened with colorful drawings and a special shelf where Mr. Hoppy and Officer Paws sat side by side. Later, as they sat on the porch watching Sadie draw with chalk on the sidewalk, Kyle turned to Ray. The department officially reinstated you? Ray nodded. Full duty next week. The review board decided my dedication to child welfare demonstrated commendable police work, if unorthodox, methods. They watched Sadie in comfortable silence for a moment. Her stomach was normal size now, her energy returned. She was drawing an elaborate house with 3 stick figures in front, a small one and 2 tall ones. You saved us both, Kyle said simply. Ray shook his head. You saved each. Other. I just helped you find your way back. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the yard, Sadie looked up from her drawing and waved at the 2 men on the porch. Her smile, gap-toothed and radiant with the simple joy of being home, was all the reward Ray needed. Sometimes he thought the system works, not on its own, but when good people refuse to give up on each other. Officer Ray, Sadie called. Come see my picture. It's our family. Ray rose and went to her, heart full. Not every story could have this ending, he knew, but this one did, and for now that was enough.